So I was very excited about the coloring process for Halfdanr. It was actually the first time that I've been able to take one of my films through the coloring process in a professional setting, and with an individual who's professionally trained to specifically give their full attention and mastery to that important area of the film.
So as a producer, for me, the coloring process for Halfdanr was really exciting. I was looking forward to it in completing the film because I took some color timing classes a few years back and really enjoyed the process, the setup of it. And you know, it's painting. The opportunity to create a certain visual aesthetic and have that feed into other visual design elements to express your story is very powerful, and it's very interesting, the process. So I was really looking forward to working with color, and off of a recommendation, we hooked up with Big Game Color, James Knott.
As a young kid, I grew up playing a ton of sports, but also was a big movie watcher as well. When I got older, sports faded away and cinema took over. My mother was a big inspiration for that. So yeah, in college, I started off as an editor of the senior film school and senior project, I would say. And then I had the aspirations of coming to LA to be a writer, director, and whatnot, like every other person, you know, wants to make it big in Hollywood. Eventually learned that my editing skills were pretty good though. So got a job editing out here in LA. That was my first big break, doing online editing and some other editing for a couple of years, but then got a little burnt out to that. I was working for West Coast Digital, production place in Santa Monica. Kenny Fields was my boss. Really great guy, and he was, really good documentary film editor and really good at doing promos as well.
So you guys just pretty much products, promos, documentaries?
Yeah, actually, and some reality TV actually. MTV, VH1 was the bread and butter actually. And we kind of responsible for the look of the hills, the city, Laguna Beach, Run's house, all that kind of stuff. We were kind of responsible for. So that was my first big break and working in the industry.
Two of my biggest inspirations as far as the mood, the color, and really the texture, I think, too, for the film visually is drawn from The Revenant, which was also shot all natural light. And then Lord of the Rings is, as I've mentioned one or two times before, a very, very significant inspiration of mine, near and dear to my heart. So I really like the richness of the image and the color in Lord of the Rings, and then the rawness and almost the cold clamminess of The Revenant. It just adds a gravitas and a reality to the film that I find extremely appealing and extremely appropriate for the setting of the Dark Ages that we have in Halfdanr.
From the moment we spoke on the phone, top-notch gentleman, top-notch business professional. We walk in, there's a leather couch, the man's got refreshments. I mean, you know, the guy is really first class. So it was a pleasure just making that initial contact with James and then going through the process of coloring the film. He was there every step of the way, providing guidance. This is the first time I also do some editing, and this was the first time I had actually worked with a professional colorist in a post-production workflow. So there was a lot of blind spots that I had, and you know, just producer, you're wearing a lot of hats, and this was one I was wearing, and you know, still learning. And he was great at mentoring me through working with his workflow, which is pretty proficient. So yeah, the coloring process was really fun.
I knew I wanted to be a colorist. First time I saw Davinci 2K, there was a old veteran colorist there that happened to be retiring. And he would let me sit in with him and tell me stories about how he used to color music videos for Aerosmith, working with David Fincher. I thought that was the coolest thing ever. Eventually, I got a job working in a machine room at that same post-production house. That gentleman retired, and my mentor took over. His name's Matt Lear, amazing colorist. He took me under his wing, taught me everything, the tricks of the trade, and full understanding of color science behind why things look good.
All the emotional textures that Lance and I had discussed since 2017, starting with the development process, you know, of his creation, all of that just came to life once the color was on the picture. There was a feeling of completion that was intensely strong. It was intense. I felt like, okay, Lance and I are going to level 2, here we go, you know? It felt like leveling up in a video game because We had worked so hard, and I knew that the coloring process was like the end cap. That was like, bam, you know, now it's time to move on. And to see that on screen it was pretty amazing.
When we were watching Big Game Colors reel, it was interesting because he had a lot of stuff for the NFL, a lot of really professionally done, exciting stuff that was a little bit more commercial grade or geared towards the commercial end. And there was one film, just a few seconds of one slasher film in the woods, in the snow, that had this cold blue kind of murky feel to it. And it was at 3 seconds, and it was exactly what I imagined for Halfdan. And I saw that and I was like, that specific thing right there, that's what I want in Halfdan. Honestly, working with James has been absolutely wonderful. From the first time he invited us into the color bay to get a look at it and to really give his full attention to what we wanted and what we were going for, it was a really one of those things where you walk in and it just feels right. We sat down on a nice comfy leather couch. He offered us a soda or some cold refreshment, and then we watched it on a big screen, and he informed us. He said, honestly, this screen is probably going to be the best it ever looks and you ever see it. So just because he had a high-tech setup there. And that was also really awesome. His gear was top-notch. He had what he needed. I came away from the first meeting with James feeling like literally anything was possible with the color. He could do exactly what we wanted, and he also had the flexibility and the experience to create things that we hadn't thought about before. Overall, just really positive and excellent.
So what made me want to work on this project it was a recommendation from a client of mine, and he's a good filmmaker. In Hollywood, it's interesting. The recommendations actually go a long way, more than I'd say a resume. So when I met Lance and Robert for Halfdan, got told the story, it blew me away as this period piece about Vikings. And I've never worked on that many, I'd say, period pieces where, you know, got action and drama, and I was totally on board. We came up with a workflow where we'd have them both sit in and we'd set establishing looks for each scene of the film. There's a critical part of color correction, setting the look for each scene. We decided to go overall with a slightly desaturated feel, but then we kept the greens, it's a forest green, and then we went with a cool steel blue for some of the nighttime scenes.
I actually didn't have any concerns. I had such a great experience communicating with James from the get that, you know, I just felt like he knew what he was doing, and he communicated well, and like, no, I didn't have any concerns. It was just about getting into the art and getting the work done, in my opinion. And that's what we did. We knocked it out as fast as we could. I met James at the NFL many a nights, going back and forth on things, but it's all good. It was cool. It was en route. So, yeah.
I think what sets Big Game Color apart is my attention to detail. I don't let anything fall through the cracks. I'm very on point. I think I'm pretty relaxed and create a nice working atmosphere. And I think that's important because when you have directors, producers, and DPs sitting in your color bay with you, you want everybody to be at ease and feel good. You don't want anything to be stressful. And I think I provide that as well. First thing I want to know is story. If I don't think it's an engaging story, then I don't want to work on it. Second thing I want to know is, I want to know about the creators, and I want to know, are they professional? Do they care enough like I care? Anything I put my name on it, I'm giving 100%. That's a huge thing. Some people fake it here in this town. After that, unfortunately, in this business, it comes down to budget as well. Budget does play a factor, because then unfortunately, the way it is especially for a freelance person like I am, it comes down to is it worth it for my time to actually take a project on, unfortunately. And that's the sad truth of Hollywood as well.
So some advice I'd give new filmmakers going into the post-production workflow would be to use the 20% rule. Whatever you think you're going to spend on the post-production budget, color, in each department, each category, you know, like color, editing, sound design, whatever, add 20% to that.
Who's coloring this piece?